You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant. And today we're going to do a deep dive into the checkout and delivery. And I loop those things together. But what I've seen a lot over the past, 6 to 9 months is a lot of concentration around checkout. And as everybody is reevaluating their tech stack, customer acquisition costs are going out. We're talking about conversion, lifetime value. A lot of that, everything comes to culmination at the checkout. But then what's often the case is that we see the conversation stop there, and delivery, right, is actually the final portion of it, and how that impacts overall conversion rate and customer loyalty, lifetime value, all that fun stuff. So it's going to be a great conversation today. Avi Moskowitz is here with us from PrettyDamnQuick. Avi, I'm going to kick it over to you. We got connected in this space a while back and just been really impressed with what you're doing, and just would love, to get into a cool conversation with you around this. But I'd love to kick it over to you, a brief intro on yourself and then the company as a whole and what you guys are doing in the space. And then we'll just take the conversation from there. Sound good?
That sounds great. Aaron, thanks so much for hosting me and BWG Connect and all the great things that you do to further the e-commerce ecosystem. So I really appreciate this opportunity. My story really starts most recently. The latest chapter is opening up a craft beer company and meeting COVID and suddenly having hundreds of orders a day, some days over 1,000 orders, and finding that there were very limited tools out there that let me effectively manage the business. Now, it's more like an onion with many different layers of challenges that we were hit as we started reaching volume and looking at all the different pieces that we need to get together to actually get a customer their order, get that customer an order that meets their expectations, the timing, the costs, and all the different pieces that relate to it. Something I had never experienced before. I've never, before I had this brand and before we actually were fulfilling, I was like most people, and you place an order and you get the order, and not much happens in between. Some people, some of us, maybe me, thought that there was this, magical drone or bird hanging out over our building, waiting for the order to be placed, and they come, knock on the door, and deliver it. And that was an incredible wake up call for me going through this process, and suddenly finding myself at 6 a.m. with a room full of people helping me print labels out and then stacking them on the floor in piles so that which orders go with which ones go to which parts of the country, which ones have to get out today, which ones can wait till tomorrow. And then, of course, someone kicks a pile and then you start over again. Or if you don't realize they kicked the pile, then you ship the wrong items to the person. And heaven forbid, you should print the same label twice. So it was as you might imagine, a festival.
Of sorts. It's a good word.
That's a good word. Of managing this process, and just very surprised that the tools available were very much point solutions. I can get an app to print labels. I can get an app that might help me pick and pack. There's an app for this, but collectively we were looking at so many different apps, many of them that hadn't been updated since Amazon Prime came along in 2018, and finding these challenges overwhelming to the point where I even questioned whether or not I should have an e-commerce store. It just, during this time of COVID, I said that we've worked so hard to build a great brand, and here we are, by the minute, losing customers and spending a lot of my energy apologizing. So we zoomed out, and fortunately, we were able to architect and draw a solution that we felt could manage the challenges that we saw along the way. But in the process, we kind of discovered the basic difference between what happens in retail and what happens in e-commerce. Because, all of us kind of look at e-commerce as something you can step into, you get a customer, and like, what could be so hard? It's about getting these people into your store, generating interest, moving them through that marketing funnel, getting them to check out, and then you just fulfill the item. And as I started, looking at this more holistically and understanding the extent of the challenge that's there, I realized that it starts with a fundamental difference between retail and e-commerce, right? We all know retail. All right, Aaron, you walk into a store, you pick up an item, you swipe your credit card or you pay money, and you leave the store with the item. In e-commerce, fundamentally, the difference is that you're actually paying, right? You go into a store, you choose your item, and you're paying, but you'll leave the store without the item. And that leap of faith, it's not like your money is set aside in escrow or it's being held until you get it. You're actually paying. The money's leaving your account, and you leave the store without the item in hand. That leap of faith is something that I think most brands underestimate, most people, and even myself underestimated until we actually started experiencing it and understanding that, what Amazon does at its core is, and I believe that the vision, and if you read all the letters and the materials that come out of Amazon from day one, this is something they realized and recognized, and they built their entire business to address the fact that in e-commerce, you're not going to leave the store with the goods. So what do? From the moment you enter the store on Amazon, they're communicating as if they're going to give you the product. You come in and they say, when are you going to get it? How are you going to get it? How much is it going to cost? All the different options for getting it. So it really feels like these guys, the number one priority to them is not selling me, but delivering the item, right? From the moment I come into the store, they're talking to me about, how do I get you this item? And it changes the whole conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you hear this comment all the time, right? That Amazon is a logistics company that happens to sell things. And if you're a logistics company, what you're selling is the delivery of the product, right? Of whatever it might be, right? And that's an interesting way to think about it, just to put some additional color on it as a whole.
and in contrast to that, right? Most e-commerce brands look at the logistics, fulfillment, and delivery as a necessary evil. We say after death, moving, and taxes, logistics is a close fourth. It's one of those things that's really relegated to people that know operate. I don't know supply chain, operate, all that stuff. That's not. I can bring the customer in, and if that becomes an afterthought, it may seem nuanced, but we believe it's fundamental to the overall experience of the customer. And I'm not talking about, fast delivery or hyper fast delivery or last mile. It's none of that. I think we've all, we drank the Kool-Aid for a while and we realized that customer just wants you to meet the expectation that you set, that they have, and the promise that you've made. Just live up to that. And I'm fine. I'm not always leaving for the airport in a few hours and need the item now. Most of the time, if you tell me that I'm going to get it and the promise is clear and you deliver on that promise, I'm cool. And that's a big part of it. It's setting the right expectation at the right speed. And it's about promising what you will deliver and then delivering on that promise. Now, both of those have to be lived up to for a successful result. Because if you make a lot of promises, and it is easy to make promises, and brands today are certainly aware, much more aware than ever before, about what it means, to make an accurate promise, which is why there are so many sites that say, 4 to 10 days or 3 to 8 days.
Forget about it.
Right? They'll go out and leave themselves the margin, rightfully so that the promise is accurate. And you don't want to make a promise you don't keep, because the implications are much worse of making a promise and not living up to it. And we know how much of the tickets out there, on all these support platforms, the vast majority of tickets are, where's my order? What we call Wismo. Most people, because of the experience they have in buying the item, the first thing they do after they place an order is try chatting or calling and and reaching and saying, so when am I getting my order? I saw the information on checkout and you said 4 days. So today's Thursday. Does that mean it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Am I getting on Sunday, Monday? And they, sometimes the answer is, well, you didn't read all the terms and conditions or the frequently asked questions and no one's sitting there with a calculator trying to say, well, is it a holiday weekend? Does the weekend start now? Is this a season where you're particularly busy because of peak? Do things change? If I order in the afternoon versus the morning, does that affect when I get it delivered? There's so many different variables, and you're not communicating that effectively to the customer, which immediately they're a customer now. And the very first thing that they're experiencing is uncertainty, right? The first thing
but when you're looking at it, so you're seeing, because I agree with you on the timing thing, right? Like we're going to go to Amazon really quick, right? And it gives me the offer. It can be there by tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. No, right? I don't want you there before 10 a.m. Right? I don't even need it, right? I might not even be home, right? And so I'm saying, okay, well, I'm trying to pick the day, and that's all I want is to be able to pick my timing and have it show up. But I mean, that's Amazon. So on the direct consumer side, you're just replicating that as a whole. And do you find then, would love to hear a little bit about that, is if brands can just communicate better, just specifically around that, is there an increase in conversion rate? Like, would love to peel that onion back a little bit, because everybody, again, right now, profitability. I mean, anybody who's listened to this podcast, the last, 6 or 8, I brought up this idea of profitability, that everybody's focused on it. And a lot of that profitability is, it costs more than ever to get people to the site. How can we make sure we convert them? How can we make sure we make them happy? How do we make sure that they come back? And if you can solve anything in there and it doesn't cost more money, let's roll. Or you can get a return on investment 3, 4, 5x. Let's roll every day of the week.
So there's so many pieces to this, Aaron. The first is that what I mentioned earlier about folks finally getting to checkout, right? So I get to the place, I made the decision, you already spent the money, right? The CAC has been spent, customer acquisition cost, you marketed, you got me, I picked an item, I got to checkout. And that little piece, the leap of faith that I have to make to say I'm paying for this now, there are so many considerations, but a big part of that consideration, according to Amazon, as much as for them, a very substantial portion of their conversion comes from the fact that they've clearly communicated the delivery expectation to the customer. So what's happening is you've spent all this money, but now you're leaving money on the table because you didn't clinch it. You didn't give that customer the clarity that they needed. And there's that one question mark in the back of the head of, when am I really getting this? So what you were speaking to, Aaron, is give the customer the control of when they're going to get it. And certainly that's a factor here, but that's not as important in the conversion. That's more of a convenience thing. I want to get this item and I know I'm going to get it, but I want to get it at the time that's most convenient for me. I'm talking about the leap of faith of, am I going to get it? Is it going to come? And anywhere within a reasonable time frame. And if I don't know, if you say 4 days, and even if you say 4 business days, but you don't really exactly mean it, because you're going to pick and pack, right? The item has to get picked and packed. And maybe if it's after 3 o'clock, you're no longer picking and pack items today, and maybe you're going into the weekend, and maybe Mondays, your performance is different than the rest of the week, then your promise is just not going to be as accurate as it can be. And what you find is, as the accuracy of the promise is there, and as you're able to reflect what you're capable of doing, the conversion will increase. So that conversion doesn't begin on checkout. You're able to begin influencing the customer's confidence in your ability to deliver from the moment they enter your site. So on the product page already, we're able to communicate the estimated delivery date. We're able to give them a lot of information that replicates that Amazon experience that we feel like this is a logistics company. They're interested in getting me this product, and they have enough information about the product to clearly communicate it to me. And there isn't this ambiguous, this is when you're going to get it. They're being as clear as they can possibly be based on where it's getting delivered to, where their inventory is located, based on their pick and pack times, based on the carriers that they use, based on the box it's going into. You can see where I'm going with this. There's a massive amount of data that supports this information. And the reason that it's not easy, there's no one to blame for not having embraced this from day one. It's a complex puzzle to solve, because for you to be able to formulate a promise as Amazon, you own the entire stack. You own everything. You own the warehouses, the cars, everything is predictable and flowing through one data platform. I can see that driver. I got it all. In e-commerce, as soon as the order is done and out, it can be me self-fulfilling it. So now it's going to my warehouse. Which warehouse? If I have multiple warehouse locations, if my inventory is not replicated exactly in both warehouses, which is very likely, like I have some inventory that may not be in the second warehouse. Well, how do I manage an order that's split, that's coming out of two places? And now how do I communicate the delivery of that back to the customer? If I'm using a 3PL, what's the SLA of the 3PL? When do they pick and pack their orders until? When do they get their orders out by? When do those carriers pick up the items? When are they going to get delivered? How does seasonality affect it? And then potentially weather. You can take all these things, and then once you're able to actually bring it all together in one platform, which is what we do, I can start making promises that are meaningful. And yes, it's speaking about, top line and bottom line revenue, we're able to significantly drive top line and bottom line revenue because the customer experience is significantly enhanced. Now, beyond that, because customers are fickle and every customer is different, there may be customers who are more cost sensitive than speed sensitive, and vice versa. So now I need to really begin to understand and use that information during the course of the buying experience to try and give the customers what they're looking for. And that means that I may have different options that are presented to the customer based on what I know about the customer, what I know about the product, what I know about the fulfillment and delivery. It also means I can actually treat different customers differently in checkout. I can look at a first-time customer differently than a returning customer. I can look at a whale, someone who buys frequently and is like the ideal customer, and treat them differently. I can make offers to them dynamically in checkout that will encourage them to convert, but at the same time protect the profitability of the business because I know what that shipping cost is ultimately going to be. So I can look at contribution margin. I can look at all the factors, including LTV. What's the lifetime value of this customer, and how much is it worth to me? How much can I spend to buy this customer to convert, maybe by giving them free shipping, maybe even free expedited shipping? So when you look at all those levers, you suddenly bring the customer into an environment where you've already spent the money on CAC, right? We're not saying take another dollar and put it in. That customer's here at the cash register. They're ready to spend.
But you can take a look at then, this is next level, right? On the checkout delivery process as a whole. And I think this is where everybody needs to go. But then you're able to look, because everybody talks about personalization, right? When you land on the site, and we know now people can have different offers, different feeds, different search results. But then this is even at checkout, at the point where we're determining delivery method, giving people different offers based on exactly who they are. Is that if they've signed in? Is that basically shopping behavior on the site? Is it just with their first time customer? And then do you carry that on to A/B testing? Now, I'm all about A/B, C, D, E, F, G testing. Are you doing all that like nonstop?
Exactly right. So because we've been living in checkout for so long, not so much for optimizing. 2023 was a year for us where we expanded from the operational efficiencies. So beyond checkout, right, we're a full platform. We do order management, fulfillment, whether you're doing self-fulfillment or working with a 3PL, the delivery tracking all the way through. So we call ourselves the operating system for e-commerce operations, and we do it holistically. the reason we talk about the checkout opportunity is because there's money that's on the table that can be immediately captured by leveraging the existing tools that are there. Now, Shopify over time has made checkout more and more difficult to do things, but there's room, and we've used that space to be able to build A/B testing into checkout, and we've expanded that. So we're able to look at the product page. We're able to look at a whole lot more when it comes to A/B testing and see how the delivery promise, how the pricing for shipping, how free shipping threshold, how all those different factors can ultimately influence profitability. And we're not talking about, pennies or dollars. We're talking about six figures. Obviously, these are brands, the larger the brand, the larger the impact, but it's a very significant impact. And by having the A/B testing platform that's driving the optimization, it's a continual process. We're able to continually look at, and it's affected at different times of the year in different ways. When you look at Black Friday, Cyber Monday, customers are hypersensitive to discounting. So you want to make sure that you're able to manage the promise that you're making, but also at the best possible price. So we created this concept that was very effective this past Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that was buy now, ship later, where brands were able to give the customers a discount and say, if you're willing to wait just a couple of more days, then I'll discount the item because I know I'm not going to overwhelm fulfillment. Now, it's not just overwhelming fulfillment, but there's a cost to fulfillment when you have peaks and dips because there are humans involved. So if you need to bring in people for overtime, or the warehouse needs to do additional hours, or you need to rush to get these orders out, there's some cost associated with that. So this helps level out some of that cost. And something else that one of our brands did incredibly effectively was they provided an incentive. So they have a product that customers buy multiple times, and it's happened every year during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And they realize that they're shipping to the same customer in multiple boxes during the course of the weekend. So they put a message up saying, if you're willing to wait till right after the weekend, Tuesday morning, we'll ship all the orders that you've placed over the weekend. We'll give you some kind of discount. And on Tuesday morning, they had over 3,000 orders that were multiple orders going to the same places that they were able to consolidate into one. They estimated with savings of over $30,000 from doing that. Now, I'm mentioning this because it comes in so many flavors and forms. When you look at like what the impact of operational efficiency is, it affects the top line, it affects the bottom line, it affects operational efficiency, it affects lifetime value because happy customers come back and they come back again and again. It just touches on so many of the key elements of the business, and that's what we look at. We're looking at, fundamentally, what's the experience that this customer is going to come away with. And for us in e-commerce, there's such a big opportunity to provide a wow experience.
Yeah, but this is a space that's just been neglected forever, right? Because everything was focused on site speed, landing pages, product pages. Are we having video on it? Are we not having video on it? Is there offers? What happens in search? And then once it gets to checkout, it's been completely neglected, right? Everybody can close their eyes and kind of picture, okay, on the left-hand side, I've got to fill in my name, my email, my address. On the right-hand side is all the payment options. They can visualize it. It's just been untouched for over a decade, like since the beginning. And the other thing that hasn't been touched is anything on the tech side on the back end that directly feeds back into the actual experience, right? Obviously, there's tech, there's new warehouse management systems, there's OMSs, there's everything that's popped up. But in this case, what's directly affecting the customer just hasn't been touched, because all this new tech that popped up over the past 3 years has been around ad tech, right? Or, AI now, obviously generative AI, there's a huge pouring into it. So this is, I don't know, I'm pulling a couple threads out, and one of those is like the expectation from the customer isn't necessarily the fast ship time. In some cases it is, but the expectation is just an accurate ship time. When is it going to show up? And that's for me. Like, there are some times where, like, I need it tomorrow, and that's going to dictate where I shop and if I buy it or not. Most of the time, 98% of the time, I just want to know when it's going to hit my doorstep. So if somebody's there, if you can communicate that, then, it solves a lot of my issues. A lot.
Yeah. And it the complexity of it's hard to fully appreciate. Like I said earlier, like I was guilty of the same kind of simplicity. What could be so hard? But the complexity is great. And I'll just touch on some of it and why it's hard to do. Because theoretically, you could update your website, yourself, and kind of write messages every day and say, for this, it's almost virtually impossible. Theoretically, you can put these messages in and try and communicate accurately to a customer, but you realize very, very soon that if it's not data driven, if I can't create an arrives by date that's based on the day of the week, the time of day, the seasonality, and all the other factors that are driving this deliverability, I'm not going to be able to deliver on time. But the reason that complexity exists is because there are so many different factors. Your delivery companies, your relationship with your delivery companies, suddenly you get a surcharge, and your whole all your economics is suddenly impacted by it. Typically shipping can be as much as 10 to 20% of your revenues. It's a crazy chunk, and many times you don't even realize what your carriers are charging you because the contract says that they can ding you later in the year if you didn't meet your minimums, or the surcharges that they feels arbitrarily being assigned. And even happened this week and last week with UPS and FedEx, where suddenly, there are surcharges. And how do you plan your business and understand your profitability if these things aren't clear? So you have to have your hand on a lot of different dials to ensure that you end up with the right contribution margin. And that's really what we're focused on, is ensuring that the operational pieces that you're putting into place deliver the contribution margin that you're expecting by taking all those numbers, providing visibility into them, and helping you not just see the numbers. There's certainly, some great dashboards and informational, places to see everything you can possibly see on your site. But then you also need the operational component. And we bridge both of those together. On the one hand, we're connected to every carrier, all 3PLs. We give you the warehouse infrastructure so you can pick and pack if you want to use our platform for that, or we integrate with the platform you have today, whatever platforms you're using. But by bringing that data together, we consider that the first phase of the process, and then we actually give you the operational tools to adopt and adjust and ensure that you're actually making money. So just as a simple example, during BFCM, many of our brands had challenges because they weren't able to see the surcharges. So let's say, I charge $10 for shipping, but in the back end, there's a fuel surcharge or just a surge charge, for this time of seasonality, but I don't know what it is exactly. We're able to take the live rate from the shipping company, get a clear estimate of what the cost is going to be for this particular order. And then rather than give the customer a price of $9.63, and then the next time they come in, it looks like $9.67, it feels a bit like gambling. We can round it up to a number that makes sense to the customer, that doesn't give them the sense that, it's fluctuating, like a shipping exchange, but the price is fixed, but it also ensures that you're not going to lose money on this order. And there's a lot of examples like this, but I'm just trying to provide some element of the complexity that we're dealing with to be able to formulate this. And Amazon invested billions to get to this place, and we did invest quite a bit on our side to build out this kind of platform that takes all those things into consideration. And even in some instances, we can take weather into consideration. If you're selling ice cream or plants, and you need to know, can I have this item out for a day or two based on the weather patterns that are out there. So you can imagine it's never ending. It's a never ending process where you need to continually optimize to ensure that you're offering the customer the right options for delivery at the right price, and understanding that not every customer is equal. Not every item is located in a place. Sometimes the item is very close to the customer, and you can offer them speedy delivery without even paying for the expedited delivery. There's a lot of possibilities and methodology for contributing to the bottom line. And going back to what you said at the beginning of the conversation, Aaron, which is how do you make more money with what you've already spent to get that customer? That's really what the thesis is here.
Then are you able to then on the back end step in and say, like, look at a business and say, hey, your point, the delivery cost, right? I mean, we got connected, I think, via Corey at Da Vinci Micro Fulfillment, where he's forward deploying inventory, where you can take a look and say, hey, you're shipping out of 2. If you switch to Corey, it may look like you're spending more money, but you're actually going to save tons of money because you can roll that back in. And then you can either choose to spend that money on, right, decreasing the cost to increase conversion rate, or just taking it and offer bigger discounts, promotions, whatever it might be. Or maybe you just need those dollars back to your overall margin. Like, are you able to step in and help companies out on that side? Be like, hey, I got 15, 20 people doing this over there and they're crushing it. You're not, because you're using a single warehouse.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, this is like a never ending conversation when you start opening up those doors. Corey in particular is really trying to replicate the Amazon model, with the physical warehouses being located as close to the customer as possible, so that he can help you balance your inventory and optimize your shipping cost, so that at the end of the day, you're spending as little money as possible based on inventory placement. That would be a simple way of describing it. But something Corey and I had spoken about is, what if you didn't have to give Corey all your inventory? What if you can choose some inventory that would benefit from the distribution that Da Vinci has, but you can do the other things the way you're doing it? You can actually start diversifying your inventory. And, some of the most powerful parts of our platform are customers that are doing this omnichannel or multi-channel approach, where I'm using different 3PLs, I'm doing some self-fulfillment, I'm shipping from stores. And when you have that kind of complexity, we're able to really optimize and get the product that's closest to the customer that's getting it to them in the fastest time frame at the lowest possible cost, right? Those are the 2 levers. Get it to them as fast as practical at the lowest possible cost. And there are a lot of different components to this, because here we are in the physical world. In the digital world, on Shopify, move this pixel there, move that pixel there. And, okay, it doesn't take a whole lot of lifting. In the physical world, oh my gosh, UPS, just sent me a letter and they said they can't support my shipping anymore. Or, my driver's not coming today, or any one of, or they, the wrong delivery, the delivery company took the wrong pallet. I have 2 delivery companies and they switch pallets. And it's the real world we live in. And these are real examples of things we've had to deal with, and we deal with it. The platform's built from the ground up to deal with the real life, the real physical world that these orders have to pass through to get to the ultimate customer.
No, I mean, I'm excited. All I do is talk to brands all day, every day. And when we can find these new innovative things that really impact not only the bottom line, but also customer experience, I'm always looking at it from my personal experience as a whole. And if you can just give me a more accurate look, the flip side is, if I'm close and you can give it to me, you can give me a special discount, or that I'm a return customer over and over again, and you can personalize it, then I'm all in. Then I'm coming back over and over again, which is, again, the lifetime value piece that people are really, really looking for. What are you most excited about? I mean, this is a cool spot. I don't know very many people at all. I don't know anybody that's tackling it with the enthusiasm that you guys are tackling this. But what are you excited about in the coming year?
Yeah, there's so many components, in terms of what we're building out. It is a rather, wide scope of features that we already deployed, but we also go very deep. So for us is making sure we're connected to every possible delivery method, every possible 3PL, so that the data that we're feeding is as complete as possible. What we're doubling down on is providing full visibility for the brand so that they have even more information than they do today. A lot of what we see is kind of superficial or estimated, and we think that we can do even better in terms of providing that kind of updated information, expanding the capabilities of checkout to even other features, because now that we're living in checkout, what else can we do to enhance the customer experience and help ensure that they're going to convert? A lot to do with rules and automation so that we can use the intelligence and the machine learning of all the data and all the information that we process on a regular basis to continually improve and optimize. We're doing that already, but take that even to the next step. AI is a factor, but I would say it's supplemental. It's more about taking what's there and just making it more digestible for the folks. I think we have a lot of educating that we've been doing, but continuing to educate the market about how your bottom line can really be improved dramatically when you have the right tools in place. Trying to simplify the product more and more so that even folks that don't have operational experience are able to use it. So there's a lot of different pieces to it. What we're particularly proud of is we've been able to move into some very large accounts and very high volumes with significant complexity and solve for that. Whether it's the platform itself or the integrations with the existing platforms they have, and trying to reduce the lift. Operations is typically scary because it can be a spaghetti of different systems and processes, and everybody's afraid,
Nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to
Yeah,
touch it.
yeah. And that we come in with a really neat approach of saying, let's just solve for what you need now, and then you can expand from there. But let's do the lowest lift possible with the highest possible impact, which is why our checkout optimization doesn't even require anything on the operations side. You can literally just deploy it without any operational component at all, but it starts multiplying as we start connecting to your 3PL, to your carriers, to all those other systems. We also connect to your support system so that we're up to now, like I said, many of the inquiries that businesses and brands get relate to where's my order. Now, the promise state is integrated with Gorgeous and other platforms so that you're able to actually see that information as a customer support person and be proactive about it. You're not waiting for the customer to call you. So support tickets, we have some brands that had hundreds, some with even over 1,000 tickets a month just that were Wismo related that virtually disappeared as a result of deploying the platform and the integration. So it's more of this, more operations. We love being in the plumbing, and we also love affecting checkout because of what we know in the plumbing, in the back end of the system and the operational side. But it's been incredibly rewarding to be able to see that the kind of work that we're doing that's typically relegated to the back office is able to have such a dramatic impact on the front office.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think people are wanting this, right? But they don't just want a random person to come in and do it. They don't want another consultant to come in. They want kind of a solution. I mean, I've been picking your brain for a while now. Any questions? I always like to give the opportunity. Any questions you have for me?
Yeah, look, we've had some, dramatic, not just few months, but few years behind us, COVID, post-COVID, and economic meltdown, and so much, so many curveballs that have been thrown towards e-commerce. Like, what's your view? What's your take of 24? And, would you say you're coming at this from an optimistic point of view, or, what do you expect the reality of 24 and beyond to be in the e-commerce?
It's a tough one. So I'll go back a year. So this time last year, everybody was waiting for everything to come to a screeching halt in January, February, as it seemed that people were running out of money. It didn't happen. And then they thought midsummer as credit was like getting maxed out, and it didn't happen. And now, you know, the growth isn't what everybody had necessarily hoped for, but people, if you were discounting, you moved product in Q4 here. And so we're at a point now where everybody's just holding their breath again. I'm glad I'm not on the brand side having to put in expectations, because everybody tried to hedge their bets last year and they beat them. And executive teams are like, well, you're saying the same thing you did last year and you won, so you better up the number. But I mean, from this standpoint, I'm optimistic. And I'm optimistic because it's going to sound weird, but a lot of the PE VC money that's getting backed out right now is requiring businesses that are jumping in that help, like you, that are doing very, very impactful stuff, that are, profitable and moving forward. They're going to get more money, and more is going to be poured into them to get even better. And we had everybody for the past couple of years could kick off a tech company. The money was just flowing everywhere. But that doesn't mean you were good or you're profitable or that you were solving a deep need. Everybody signed up for everything, right? The FOMO of, if I don't have that widget, if I don't have that app, then it's not going to work. Well, now they're getting rid of all those as the money's all drying up. And what we're getting to, what I'm excited about, is getting to some really cool new tools that I've got 20 to 50 brands using, and they absolutely love them. And we just need to help educate. I mean, that's what it's all about here: educational, informational, networking sessions. And I'm pumped because the number of people that, and they were smart people who did those startups that are kind of falling apart now. They're going on to, the ones that are actually going to make it. So we get this pooling of a talent, we get this pooling of cash to invest in it at the time when people are going to need it more than ever, because e-commerce is expensive. So you see a lot of sites just shutting down. Like, we just want to be in store. We can't tape $5 bills to the top of everything we ship out. Which is why when Corey connected us, I was like, yes, because if we can take that $5 that we're putting on the top of every box, and we can, make an extra $5 instead, because somebody's finally addressing the back office, the operations, all the stuff that nobody wants to touch. I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited for brands. I'm excited for what's out there. Now, does the economy keep growing? What happens with interest rates? I have no idea. But I do know that there's a lot of cool new stuff that's popping up there that's going to empower digital teams, which, again, people are, trying to trim down digital teams across the board. They're going to need more tools to do the same amount as they were doing before. They're going to be questioned about growth. So they're going to need as many, new pieces of tech as possible that have a positive ROI. And so I view that as kind of, my job is in this networking, role as a whole, in this huge group with, thousands of brands in it. Like, how do we make sure that everybody knows what's coming? And so I'm excited. Yeah.
Look, we also always have to zoom out a bit and know that e-commerce isn't going anywhere, and we're still really at the very beginnings of it. It's represents a tiny fraction of where it's ultimately going to end up. And there are definitely headwinds and things that have made it challenging to take off. But at the end of the day, we're really at the beginning. And to me, that's what's really exciting, is there's going to be a lot of shaking out and a lot of, like you said, figuring it out. One thing that I'm seeing that's providing some level of comfort is there is this back to basics, looking at contribution margin, understanding the frugal economics of e-commerce, and knowing that what it really means to be profitable and looking at the right numbers. I think more and more people are understanding that and understanding how to do it. And something that we've strongly aligned with is trying to help businesses see as clearly as possible what their real bottom line is, and the drivers towards getting them to that place so that they can run a healthy, profitable business.
Yeah. Awesome. So as we get to the end here, Avi, how can people reach out to you? How can they find out more?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm on LinkedIn, so I love to be helpful. It's one of the first questions I try and ask is, how can I help you? So for us, there is what we have probably as our strongest asset is our knowledge and experience. So we're always happy to share whether we can be helpful with the solutions we have or not. PrettyDamnQuick.com. We're on X, Twitter. We're on and live on social, and really happy to be a part of the education when it comes to logistics, fulfillment, delivery, and ultimately checkout optimization and just driving more profit.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thanks for being such a great friend, partner, supporter of the network. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for listening in.